We Made This.
Engage!
Tea Earl Grey, hot.
There are times, sir, when men of good conscience cannot blindly follow orders. What we leave behind is not as important as how we've lived. I'm Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the Federation Starship Enterprise. Make it so.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Make It So, a dedicated Star Trek Picard podcast on the We Made This podcast network. I'm Tony Black, your host, and joining me again for this episode is my co-host, Kurt North. How are you, Kurt?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
I'm alright, yeah. We are rapidly closing in on the new CBS All Access / Amazon Prime first series of Star Trek Picard. It is but less than 2 weeks away now as we record, which is super exciting. And we thought our next episode was going to be the third Picard Countdown comic episode, which is still coming up soon, so we'll be back shortly. But we thought we'd hop on and talk about the Short Treks episode Children of Mars, given it features in a very, very small cameo the big man himself, Jean-Luc.
Yeah, not even moving footage either.
No, exactly. A stationary still image. But this one, obviously, I think it was an important one to sort of talk about in the run-up, Kurt, wasn't it? Because it is, in essence, a prequel to Star Trek Picard.
It is, and I think there's a lot to mine as well. I think there's a lot of things in this which has suddenly opened up both the comic and what's going to come as well. I think it's going to be there's going to be a lot of people out there kind of thinking, you know, what does all this mean? So I think that's really good, and it's totally ramped up my excitement for a couple of weeks.
Me too. And before we talk about it, what's your general opinion been on the Short Treks episode so far? Obviously, these are all on Netflix, and this is a bit of the strange thing in that this is on Netflix and it's not quite hit the UK yet, but it will be on Netflix in the UK, we're assuming, and even though Picard is on Amazon Prime, but this has been the part of the second series of Short Treks, again, which haven't really landed in the UK, but of what you have seen of the Short Treks so far, what have you thought about them in general?
I've enjoyed them. This one was a dead cert that I definitely wanted to see, because obviously it's something brand new, whereas the Discovery Short Treks have been... I haven't seen any of the ones post Pike, so I haven't seen any of the newer ones, but I think Calypso was the one where they are in the future, where the Discovery ship is in the future, and that one wasn't it? So yeah, I enjoyed that one. I thought that was really good. I enjoyed Saru's sister episode as well, which then plays in, and obviously Poe. But was it Poe? I can't remember her name now. She does eventually.
Oh yeah, she's got the big name, hasn't she?
Yeah. And that was
Mihani Ikahali Karpo.
That's the one.
From Runaway.
Rather you than me. I've enjoyed them. I thought they've been nice. What would be in the olden days would be webisodes, wouldn't they? Really, I think Battlestar Galactica did them for a while, and there was a few other things. Yeah, exactly. And but yeah, I've enjoyed them overall. I am in a point where, with the Discovery ones, I'm not too fussed about seeing them until they come out, whereas in the past I might have been actively looking for them. But as I say, with this one for Picard, it was a must see, really. This
was the one I think everyone was really sort of talking about, you know, in advance, because there've been some divisive ones. There've been episodes that have featured people like, you know, Christopher Pike and Spock. There's been an animated one, which was, I think, directed by Michael Giacchino, you know, the composer. But this was the one I think everyone was really excited about, because it was going to be the first glimpse of the world of Star Trek Picard, aka the end of the 24th century, going back into that. Like you say, Calypso was set in the future, but it wasn't in this time period. I think Calypso set
you kind of it's kind of thinking about setting up the next season, really.
Season 3, isn't it? Because I keep wondering if that's going to factor into season 3, because it was about 1,000 years later, wasn't it? And obviously that's where Discovery's headed up. But this is the first one that's really focused in on this. So I think this was the big draw, and I think it's the last one of this season of short treks, and there are going to be more next year or later this year to tie into presumably season 3 of Discovery, and then anything, and maybe Lower Decks as well, which is going to be coming at the end of the year, we're presuming. So yeah, they're interesting in that, like you say, they are what used to be called webisodes, and I remember back in the day, those kind of webisodes, certainly for Lost was called Missing Pieces, and it was by definition designed to sort of tell 5-minute little extras, almost like deleted scenes in a way, but things that were written specifically as, let's fill this gap in, let's sort of tell that. Whereas these are more specifically mini stories that don't necessarily connect to other plots, do they? They're sort of just, some of the things are factored into future episodes, but they don't. Some of them haven't, and I think that's quite interesting. The way they've basically created an anthology mini series, I suppose, of, like you say, webisodes.
Yeah, I mean, I think I do appreciate the ones that do link in. I mean, they're not absolutely crucial to the story if you're watching the seasons without watching them. But I do think that the ones that do link in, I mean, this one we'll talk about, which is more, I think, more thematic, but there is a lot to mine, as I said before. But I appreciate those more. But then again, I haven't seen I think Ephraim and Dot is one of the new ones, isn't it? And I haven't seen the Pike and Number One and Spock one either. So
Q&A, I think that one is.
Those are the ones I'm kind of looking forward to actually seeing. I'm definitely going to be watching them, but as I say, I think I'll just wait for them to appear in the trailer section in Netflix.
That's it, and they're non-essential. And like you say, quite a few of them do loop in and factor in, but they're sort of non-essential. Yeah. And you could say the same about Children of Mars, but then I think, in a way, this sort of works to the world building of what Picard's going to be.
Yeah. And what I will say though as well is the only thing that and we're finding this with Disney Plus as well, is that, likes of Mandalorian, which is out at the moment, that we're going backwards in some ways, that we're not seeing things for a few months ahead of what other people are, where there's so much buzz going on with Children of Mars, and that, it would be difficult to avoid it, and especially from us being in the UK, how are we supposed to see that when it's so far away from us to watch? Yeah,
it's weird. It is weird. I mean, I think the Disney Plus thing, not to get too drawn into, Star Wars particularly, but that I think has a lot to do with actual rights for Disney content in the UK and rest of Europe. But this one I don't quite understand, because the short treks the first season was on Netflix, and Netflix have the rights to Star Trek Discovery season 3. Almost, we're assuming, which I think they will whenever that comes out, presumably later this year. So it's quite strange why they haven't had the ability to, put these out at exactly the same time. Maybe it's because they are waiting for Discovery Season 3, because they sort of try and badge them, I think, with the broader Star Trek. Maybe they don't want to release them as individual Star Trek things on their own. Maybe they feel like people won't watch them if there isn't a new episode of Star Trek, which I think is very short-sighted, because there are tons of fans in the UK who would have immediately gone and watched Children of Mars on Netflix had it gone out in the same day as the US, like you said. So it's a strange strategy. And there's a lot of people, as a result, who aren't going to see this before Picard airs, which is a bit of a shame, I think, given what it contains.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely agree with that, because it's... I think that those people who want to... are anxious and stuff will find ways, but as I say, it feels like going back. You mentioned Lost. It feels like it's going back to those years, 2004 kind of thing, where we're having to look at alternative means, and you shouldn't really have to do that in this day and age, really.
No, you shouldn't. It's strange, really. It is a bit odd. Hopefully that will be corrected in future, but. I mean, part of this goes back to the fact that Picard itself is not on Netflix, which seems a strange... I was having this conversation on Twitter. It seems a strange thing in itself that Amazon managed to outbid Netflix for this, because you'd assume that Netflix would want to keep Star Trek all in one place. They've got all of the, original TV shows from the 90s and the 60s. They haven't got the movies, but you know, they've got the odd movie, they've got a couple of them, but you'd think they'd want to keep all the TV series. So either they didn't want it, or Amazon just outbid them, knowing how good this is going to be and how big this is going to be. I'm not sure, but it's a bit frustrating that it's not all centralised when it should be. But anyway, that's just the UK. There's a lot of people listening who are probably in the US who are thinking, we don't care, it's all on CBS.
What are you talking about? We watched it 2 days ago.
Yeah. So let's talk about Children of Mars then. So this is the Short Treks episode, aired on January the 9th, 2020, and it was written by Kirsten Beyer, who's one of the writers on Picard, Alex Kurtzman, who's, you know, the big cheese behind the Star Trek universe now, and Jenny Lumet, who's one of the writers who, I think she co-wrote Runaway, was one of the previous Short Treks, or wrote Runaway, and directed by Mark Pellington. And this is, according to Memory Alpha, this is set on April the 5th, which makes sense because it's very clearly First Contact Day, during the 2380s, but there isn't necessarily a specific year given as to when this is. My guess is that we're looking around the same time as the Countdown comic, which I think is, am I remembering right that... Oh, no, actually, no, is the Countdown comic...
I thought the Countdown comic was 85, 86, wasn't it, I think?
Yeah, I thought it was about 85. I was thinking then, was it about 79 or something like that? But I don't think it is. I think it's about 85, 86. It's about 15 years, isn't it, before Picard kicks off. So I'm assuming this is around the same time, or just before, because if that Countdown comic's going to see Picard, and we don't know what happens in the third issue yet, but if that's going to see Picard give his resignation as a Starfleet officer, which we're assuming it will, then this must be before that, because he is Admiral Picard. And
you see, so, I don't know. I think this is going deep into the episode already, but I'm really conscious about where this episode lies. And as you say, 85, 86, whether or not it's bang around the time that Countdown is happening, that Picard gets out of his particular situation, and this is the final straw which leads him to leave Starfleet, or whether or not this happens a little bit later. Because bearing in mind that and I half mentioned this on Twitter, and we'll get into it a bit more, that Geordi is at Utopia Planitia.
Yeah,
and this happens at Utopia Planitia. So I'm we'll delve into that in a bit.
Yeah,
put it that way. But
yeah.
I've got some thoughts on that, but I can't see it being. I can't see it being anywhere beyond 84 to 87, 88. I can't. It's got to be somewhere around as you say, the Countdown comic.
Same, I think so. We might be able to place... Well, I get the feeling we will be able to place it eventually, particularly in the timeline, but it's deliberately a little bit nebulous, which is interesting. But we'll come into this. Ultimately, the story... This is a funny Short Treks, though, really, isn't it? Because you've got... Even though it's set in the broader world of Picard and the 24th century, it's about two girls, both living on San Francisco, and their parents are on Mars. One's called Kima, she's an alien of an unknown species. The other one's called Lil, she's a human. And Lil is bullying Kima. And you have a little bit of dialogue at the beginning where they introduce themselves, and then the rest of the episode is set to a version of Heroes, the David Bowie song, by, in this case, Peter Gabriel, a good cover. And it's more of a mood piece. There's not really any dialogue. It's more about these two girls coming together. You never get a real explanation as to why Lily's bullying Kima. There's the assumption, we'll come into this, but the assumption is that there's a level of xenophobia going on, but it's not obliquely explained. But they ultimately come together by the end in the face of a devastating attack on the planet where their parents are. So that's the core of the story. But it's a funny one because it's not really about them. It isn't. You're not watching... I don't know about you, but I wasn't watching it because I was invested in them. I was watching it looking for all the bits around it that were going to give me an insight into Picard, really.
I agree to that to a degree. I mean, I think that the first time was definitely, where's this going? How is it going to link? And are we going to get any... Is there going to be any Easter eggs in here and stuff like that? But I was really invested thematically and emotionally in their story, and
well, that's good.
Which I thought was really good. I mean, you're right with there's not too much story, and it's more of a mood piece. But The two girls, I mean, even overall, I think it's 7 minutes. I think overall, I think it's 8 minutes in total with maybe a minute credits. That I found myself really invested in their story because I've had the same thought as you with the xenophobia thing. There was definitely some racist overtones in there, but I also can see it being in a way of like two girls who may have been friends beforehand and they've going through a rough patch, and the fact that they've reconciled their differences by the end of it. So I think there's a number of ambiguity in the way that it's done, that you can come at it from a lot of different angles and see a lot of different things within just a simple 7 minutes.
Yeah, and in fairness, it was well put together. You know, it was well. They didn't have long to characterise these two girls, and you got a clear sense of who they were.
Yeah,
you got a clear sense that the alien girl Kima had a really nice relationship, and the assumption is that both their parents probably are killed on Mars. You don't exactly see that, but that's the assumption by the end. That's certainly what I got. But Kima has a really good relationship with her mum. They're pulling like silly faces at each other, and her mum is I couldn't quite make out the what the girl said, because she sort of mumbled. The actress sort of mumbled. Yeah. But it's something like anti-grav worker or something like that. But she's more. Her mum is more of like a low worker at Utopia Planitia.
Yeah, I'd say probably something like a steel worker kind of thing, wasn't it? It's more of a factory worker kind of thing. Factory
worker. But her mum is you know. If you've got a socio-economic scale in the Star Trek universe, which you kind of don't because they don't have money, but if you look at it from that, she's sort of a low grunt worker. Yet Lil, who is the bully, her dad, she doesn't get on with her dad. Her dad is like a bit higher up on the chain. It looks like, you know, he's involved in. I think he said it was a quality systems organizer. What that means. A Mars orbital facility, so he seems a bit higher up.
Yeah,
and yet he's never there.
But the fact is in maybe possibly orbit.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
a bit higher up, Tony.
A bit higher up. Yeah, literally as well. That's just true. I hadn't thought of that. Symbolism. But you know, yeah. So and yet she doesn't have a good relationship. So it sort of well establishes, doesn't it, the factors as to why Lil might be a bully and why, even if you take away the racial aspect, why Lil might be a bully and why Kima is the sensitive one, because of these different relationship with their parents.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a perfect example that, you know, you literally have these 7 minutes to characterise someone, and these two characters have instantly got that. And a lot of TV shows would really struggle over a 45-minute episode. So I think that the way that they've lined that up and put them at odds, put them in different, not necessarily social classes, but put them as two separate individuals who have similarities but are very different. That they're different races. That they're obviously going through things. Both of them are going through these issues. That I think that it really does play out really well, and that's within the first 2 or 3 minutes. So I think it is definitely such a fantastic way to introduce those two characters, and as I say, with the music as well, the thematic music that they've chosen, which I think is a great choice to do that particular version with the orchestral stuff in there, and obviously I think his name's Russo, isn't it? The composer that continues on. I think he's going to be in the show, but I think he continues the music absolutely fantastically well, and I think, as I say, the first 2 or 3 minutes really does set out that put stall out on both characters.
It does. It's a nice approach actually, because they could have made it more of a dialogue heavy episode with all the usual cliches, but they kind of don't, because they want it to be. The fact they've used children is interesting, because they use this relationship to as the way to have in the backdrop the bigger events that are helping to set up Picard, which is a really interesting way of doing it. But I think the fact that Kima is an alien girl and the fact that Lily's a human is key, because one of the things that Patrick Stewart has been saying in interviews running up to Picard is that the Federation has become isolationist.
Yeah.
And since certain things. Now, if we're to take this is about, I don't know, I can't remember when Nemesis was. I think that was about end of the 2370s, wasn't it? Nemesis. Yeah. So this is a few years after that. So in theory, the Federation is roughly the same as we knew it at the end of Voyager, at the end of Nemesis. But by the time we get to the end of 2399, presumably the Federation has taken this isolationist turn, and they have started to reject some of the mission statement of, what the Federation is in terms of going out there and making these alliances. So maybe these are the seeds for some of this change. And you've got humans now actively, you've got some of these girls, some of these children. And bear in mind, these two will be, and that's why they might factor into Picard, because these two are going to be adults by the time Picard comes around.
Yeah, I think there'll be something like 22, somewhere around there, won't there? So.
Yeah. So maybe this is all part of a broader change in the way humans are approaching aliens in the Federation.
Yeah, I mean, the first couple of times I watched this, because I wasn't looking for it in particular, one of the things that I was watching for, I watched it, loved it, got my girlfriend to watch it, she loved it. Then I've watched it a couple more times since then, and one of the watches I was particularly looking out for, because I couldn't really remember how much of the school had, how many aliens they actually had within the school. Now I know it's based in San Francisco because we see that in the distance, and they've done well to fix it after the Breen attack. So obviously it's back. Yeah. But in my head there wasn't that many aliens in there, and when I've gone back, I think I could count maybe 2 or 3, including Kima. So I think that in itself tells a lot. So the majority of them were human, or at least human looking from what you could see. There was there was one kid yawning, and there was one standing when the news report comes up, and I think there's one other, and I think that was it. The rest are all humans. So that's interesting in itself. And
you've got the principal of the school is a Vulcan, as well. So so the Vulcans obviously are still there and are still involved. But it could be a sign of that. It could be something that ties into the bigger questions behind what's going on. Because the biggest thing obviously is, what is this all about? Because what we've known about Picard so far hasn't really mentioned this. From what I can remember, when we've seen the trailer for Picard, I'm pretty sure we have seen some of the footage from the Mars attack in that trailer, but we didn't know it was this. But obviously, the Mars attack. What we know about Picard is that it's going to involve the Borg, and it's going to involve the Romulans, and the Hobus supernova, and the ramifications from all that. But what we don't know is quite who has attacked Mars, and quite what it means, and what it means at this point. And we should get into this, because there are some interesting things that you see when the attack is announced. And I think another thing I think is interesting is that the attack happens on First Contact Day, as we mentioned. That is almost like an attack on a key date in history. It's almost like a symbolic terrorist attack on D-Day, or if somebody staged a terrorist attack in the future on 9/11, Do you know what I mean? Or some key date, that seems pointed that it's on First Contact Day, which again, first contact with aliens.
Yeah, I mean, you could say something like America's Independence Day or something like that.
Exactly.
You can imagine.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, Thanksgiving, those kind of things as well. These key dates. So I think that's quite significant. But on the screens, you've got, when the attack's happening, on the Federation News Network screens, you've got mentions of that the attack was by rogue synths.
Mm. Yeah.
Now, let's theorise. What do you think this means? What are, or who are, the rogue synths, Kurt?
My initial thought, and it was something that we've debated about the android-looking people that we've seen in the trailers, where there's one with F8 on, for example. And my personal thought is that, and I've seen clips. You were talking about the actual Mars attack itself on the orbiter station. In a previous episode, in a previous trailer, I think it is, that they actually see that there's a Delta, there's the Star Trek Delta on one of those ships, but in this Cured on Mars, it's not there, or it's not readily visible. So I've been thinking about this today, and one of the things that I've come up with as a potential, this is maybe jumping the gun a little bit, but that for some reason, Measure of a Man has been mentioned quite a lot online with Maddox and stuff, which I'm not quite sure that really fits, following on from Data's day, that Maddox wanted to build a fleet of Datas effectively, and that might well come into the fact of why we're seeing Data so much. that maybe that the Federation have designed a fleet. It may not even be the Federation. It might be just whoever's orbiting using this these Martian synths that have kind of went rogue, as it says, rogue synths, and that they may have been seen as almost a slave race, and that they've turned on them and attacked on this particular day. Because I think that there's no way that the fleet of that many ships could get beyond the Mars Defense Network and to attack Mars itself. And I think it has to be from within rather than from without. So I think that is my initial thought is that those androids, or whatever they may be. I know a lot of people said that the F8, meaning fate, is a bit on the nose potentially. But my feeling would be that these synths have turned on their would-be people, their would-be captors, or their what they envisage as being a slave race, and they've attacked them. Now, take that a step further for me. This is something that I've just thought about today, and I'm not necessarily saying it's a great idea, but what if that Picard is someone who's championed these synths, and this attack happens, and the Federation order all synths to be destroyed?
Ooh, and that's why he quits.
Yeah, so that's my running theory at the moment.
It could be, because I think the assumption's been that he quits over something to do with the refugee incident. And I think Patrick Stewart has sort of hinted at that as well, but there might be more to it.
Yeah, because I'm sure I've heard somewhere that there's been two major events that happened that deal with Picard and the reason why he quits. So that could be one of them. That's my guess.
Kind of makes sense. And if it was something that was linked to an exploitation of, Dr. Sung's kind of work, creating these androids based on sort of data, based on advances in this by a Federation who are, and this is the thing, and I'm wondering if Picard will get into this. Have the Federation since the end of Nemesis and Voyager become more determined to sort of create a defense that will hold? Because if you think about it, in the years when we had all the 90s series set in the 24th century, they withstood a hell of a lot. Like you mentioned, the Breen attack. The Breen got to Earth and attacked. The Dominion were getting close to, the Sol system when the war happened. They almost got there themselves fully. You had the Borg invasions, multiple Borg invasions. You had multiple sort of threats to Earth, and to the Federation that really sort of started to take their toll. And I think that was one of the things that they never, I know the tie-in novels have explored a lot of this in a fantastic way, over the years, and they've done a really good job in showing that sort of post Nemesis landscape. And they've delved into all these kind of things in far more detail than the shows will, that Picard will get the chance to do. But then Picard's doing it very differently. But yeah, I think it's part of this increasing sort of Federation determination to prevent more attacks. And if they've created a force, and like you said, rogue synths, which implies that the synths are part of their organisation, rogue. So if they've created these synths as part of a defensive program or a scientific program, and they've turned for whatever reason and have committed this atrocity, or their programming has been turned, then is that enough for Picard to take a stand in that, these are sentient beings? Doesn't matter what's happened to them. You can't. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah,
maybe.
I'm just thinking that the as much as as these synths have turned, whether or not how much of the Force was it, and did all of them deserve to die? But that's just a thought of mine that he wouldn't want a genocide, no matter what they've done. He wouldn't want a genocide on his hands, and that would be genocide by killing them all. Definitely. Or destroying them all, depending on if you believe the sentient life or not.
And the question is whether or not this takes place in the wake of Hobas or before Hobas, because you have the principal, one of the teachers in the background of the scenes where Kima and Lil are, in class, and and Lily's trying to set up Kima for drawing silly pictures of the teacher. The teacher is talking about supernovas, and you can't quite tell. I couldn't quite make out anyway whether she's talking about the effects of Hobas or about they're educating kids about the supernova, because it's the big talking point in the galaxy right now in the Alpha Quadrant. This supernova's coming, and all these Federation efforts are out there trying to help the Romulans, which is what we're seeing in Countdown. So there's some question mark there. I've got a counter theory, Kurt, for you.
Okay, go for it.
And it sort of ties into what you're saying as well, because I do like where you're going with that. But I thought that the rogue synth ships looked a kind of hybrid of Romulan and Borg technology.
All right, okay.
Or at least Borgy in themselves. Now, considering that the Borg are involved in Picard, and we know this, what if either the rogue synths are in some way Borg drones who have been captured since the Borg sort of, since Voyager sort of collapsed that transwarp hub, and they've kind of just, it seems, fallen apart to some extent, although that was very unclear by the end of Voyager. But what if they've managed to sort of capture Borg drones and they've turned them into synthetics, whether it's a slave race or whatever? Or alternatively, they've used Borg technology with android technology and created something new. And then what if there is some kind of, Romulan Borg conspiracy going on that involves some of the things we've seen in the Picard trailers that is behind this, that they attack Mars to sort of weaken the Federation and begin this process of isolationism to weaken, because obviously this is all going to be one big parallel for what's happening with America right now, one big allegory in that America's becoming more isolationist, and this is very much representing what's happening with populism and all this kind of thing right now. So could it be that? And is that where, what if Darj is a synth?
Yeah,
and
that could be.
And she comes to Picard. Maybe she's one of the synths who survived, and she comes to Picard with knowledge of this conspiracy, of what happened on Mars and what is still going on. Maybe they're planning another attack. Maybe they're going to try and destroy Earth, and that's what especially if the synths were destroyed, and that's what made him quit Starfleet. What if she survived, and that's why Seven's involved? That's why Hugh of Borg is involved in the story.
That's interesting. I think that one of the main, to counter your counter, is that I think that's why the year is so valuably important, and I think the reason why they've not done it, because if you're going down your route, you would expect that the Hobus supernova would have already happened. Whereas I think that from even a perspective from the way I thought about it, from my viewpoint, would be that it's about to happen, and this severely affects their ability to help the Romulans as well. Yeah, which is another, it could be. Which is another aspect to it. But yeah, I do like that. I do like the idea of that, because then, as you say, you've got more of this isolationism. You've got the Romulans doing what they do best, which is to infiltrate and cause these things within. We've got likes of ISIS who are, there's people going over there and all those kind of things, ISIS brides and things, which would thematically work quite well, and it'd be really interesting if whether or not that would be the case.
It might also explain why Darj is on the run, because if she's escaped and maybe they're trying to kill her to protect this because she knows too much, that she knows about this, she knows what was behind the synth's attack. Maybe they don't know what caused that attack.
I mean, the only thing that, and I've had this thought a few times recently, that I think I've heard mentioned in the trailers where they're saying if she really knows who she is, then we're pretty much all in trouble, which is going to be that whole, she's the one kind of thing, which I'm not too sure whether or not they should go down that route. But I do appreciate, I think that going down that route where she has vital information and, can blow a whole conspiracy up, and that would definitely be something I'd be interested in. Well,
it kind of makes sense to me. And who's the person you would go to if you wanted to try and stop something like this? The one person left with the decency and the morals and an echo of a better time, of an era before all this, 3,000 people die in this attack. So that's 3,000 dead on Mars. You've got what's happened to the Romulans, whatever else has happened with the Federation over time. Who's the one person you go to? The one hero, the surviving hero. We could be heroes.
Yeah. And the one person that would stand up for absolutely anything, even give up his whole career for it.
Right.
So, yeah.
Exactly. So, if anything could be what drags him back into doing this is to save the Federation, essentially. You know, it could be from something they don't even realise is going on, or something they don't believe. You know, a lot of the suggestions have been that he goes against Starfleet in many ways in what he's going to do. You know, he goes to them, maybe tries to explain this and says, look, you know, blah, 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 this is happening, and they don't believe him. So he goes off on a quest with his ragtag group in order to try and stop this himself. And that's a very Picard story. You know, certainly for this first season, and it's got a second. It's been commissioned for a second season already. Yay!
Get it.
But yeah, and that will either continue on from this, won't it, or maybe be a completely different storyline. But who knows? But this very much sets out, and I think this short trek adds a facet to this whole thing that we didn't kind of see coming.
Yeah,
doesn't it?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, we can only just look at our two opinions and thoughts about what it could potentially be. And we could both be completely wrong. There's probably thousands of theories out there which are flying around, which is great. And I think that, as I say, going back to that whole what year is it is the major pulling point, because if we knew it was after the Hobas, or if you knew it was before, then you could not potentially guess it, but you'd have more of an idea. Whereas everything's on the table. Everything's on the table. It's you can basically. You know, you could write 6,000 stories on this, and I think that's the genius of this, of bringing this out now, right in between the comic and the actual series from taking place. I think is a wonderful idea.
It's great. But I've got one question for you left.
Yeah.
Right. Which is Geordie dead, Kurt?
Well. Again, it all goes
because we talked about this on Twitter, didn't we?
We did.
And you were worried that maybe, given Geordie's on Utopia Planitia in Countdown, does he die in the Mars attack?
Yeah, and that all goes back to the what year is this? Is it?
Yeah.
Does the way I saw it the other night when I watched it is that if Picard gets out of his hole in his cell, he gets away from the Romulans, he comes back, that he's on Utopia. Well, not him, but he's on his way back, and it happens while he's on his way back for this Armada. The Armada doesn't get built. The Romulans kind of blame everyone for that. You haven't sorted our problem out, but they have this attack on Mars. He's on. They put Geordie in the comic book for a reason, and to put him there for a reason. And my gut instinct was, are they going to kill him off, or are they going to have him involved in that story element? And is he, like we've said over the couple of podcasts ago, where do we think we're going to see Geordie at some point? I think I think it's even more likely now. I think it's either going to be that we see a dream sequence like we've been seeing, because I don't know if you noticed the brand new trailer that came out. You know, the data painting that he's doing. It's of Daj. The actual the woman's Daj.
Interesting.
So that's kind of just I think that came out today or yesterday, and whether or not we see Geordie in flashback like that, or we see him post this event that he was heavily involved in, and I think that it's more likely that we're definitely going to see him over this season. I just got this feeling that we are going to see him.
I think so. Given, LeVar Burton is still around. Yeah. He's been at he was at the Destination Star Trek convention with Brent Spiner and Patrick Stewart and all this kind of thing, and that I think I agree. I think he's going to pop up at some point, definitely.
It's just too it's too obvious. Well, not obvious. It's too coincidental.
It's too easy for it to. It makes sense. It makes complete sense. For him to be there. So some interesting things. I think Children of Mars is a little short trek. It's got a nice story at the centre of it. If you take away all the extra stuff around it, which is fascinating, and the brief still image cameo of Picard commentate, saying devastating.
Yeah.
This is devastating. And it's a decent little episode. Very much whets the appetite for the new series to come. And it ends nicely with the episode title in the old Next Generation logo, which I thought was a lovely little thing as well.
And then directly after that it says based on Star Trek The Next Generation, created by Gene Roddenberry, which was nice touch as well.
Very nice, very nice. That was cool. That was a nice little wink back. We're not far out now. We are very, very shortly going to approach Picard. We may, before the first episode, have the third comic countdown out. So if we do, we'll try and blast out a podcast for that and get that out there before the first episode. Otherwise, we will be going live with... we've got a little bit of a plan worked out now. We've got our guests for the season worked out, people who are going to come on and talk with us. You and I are going to rotate, aren't we? We're going to do episode 1 and 10 together, and then we're going to rotate the hosting duties over the next few weeks.
It'd be good to hear some different voices on, not just us droning on about whether or not Geordie's alive or not, which if he's not in the first episode, every week we're going, is Geordie alive?
That should be the first question. Is Geordie in it? Each week. But that's true. We got some really good guests lined up. People from you'll have heard on other Star Trek podcasts, particularly as well, which is going to be great over the next few weeks as the show is on, and we will be attempting to get episodes out as quickly as we can. See, they'll drop in the UK on Fridays, so the aim will be to have the episode out for Monday morning. Really gives us the weekend to try and get this out there. So. We'll do our best, won't we? Really, we'll see what we can do, and we'll because we want to get the commentary out there as quick as we can, and allow you guys to theorise and with us and talk about it, and while it's on, because hopefully it will be one of those shows where every week we've got some more theories to chew on as to where it's going to go. Fingers crossed that'll be the case.
If this is anything to go by, it's going to be like that, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. So I can't believe it's nearly here. To be honest, I've been waiting donkeys for this, so I'm super excited. I don't know about you, Kurt.
Absolutely. I am super excited.
All right, well, bring it on. Nearly there. So, before we're back for the next episode, Kurt, where can people find you and what you're going to be up to?
Yeah, you can find me online on Twitter. That's rmuldrake. It's RMULDRAKE. Just about to start recording some podcast interviews on my Pick Up a Podcast. So that's at Pick Up a Podcast. Where I interview other podcasters, so that'll be interesting. I've got some good TV, music, and various other things going. I was supposed to interview somebody. I'll be getting them out as soon as I can. There's been a few hiccups along the way, but I'm formulating the plan now, so the plan's coming together a bit better now. So hopefully we'll have that out shortly. And obviously we have the Millennium podcast, which is currently on hiatus at the moment, coming back around April time. And that's the TV show, 90s TV show Millennium, and that's the Time Is Now pod. So those are the best two places to catch me, and I might well be appearing on the X-Cast shortly in a few weeks' time as well. So that's where you can find me. Yeah,
which is our dedicated X-Files podcast, which is how you and I came to do this together, the X_cast, which is airing on the We Made This Podcast network, which this podcast is obviously part of, at We Made This Pod, at wemadethispod.com. And you can find all our different podcasts there. We've got some exciting stuff coming out. We've got our Fringe podcast, Observing the Pattern, coming very soon as well, which you can find at the OTP podcast if you're interested in... Alex Kurtzman was involved in that one as well. So if any fans of him, then check that one out. And you can find me at AJ Blackwriter on Twitter if you want a little bit more of what I'm up to. So, not long now. The countdown has begun. It's a matter of weeks.
Yes.
So we'll be back. Yes. So we'll be back very soon for more Picard. But until then, engage.